What's going on, everybody? This is Wes. I wanted to continue my sharing of personal reflections through Bible study. Um, I've been, in the last couple of days, reflecting on the book of Genesis. Um, and really, I've been focusing on a particular figure in Genesis, and that would be Joseph. From Genesis chapter 37 through the end of Genesis, which is chapter 50, we find the story of Joseph, and it kind of follows his story arc from the time that he is sold into slavery by his brothers all the way until he becomes essentially second in command to Pharaoh during the famine, and then the subsequent things that happened after that. And I learned a lot of lessons from Joseph. There were a lot of lessons from leadership to life to pursuing vision, to relationships and cultivating those relationships. There are a lot of different things I learned from Joseph, and I wanted to focus on one particular lesson that I learned from Joseph today. And pretty much it stems from the lesson that I learned when he essentially interpreted Pharaoh's dream and was able to tell him what the dream meant. Now, clearly, as a spiritual person, dream interpretation is a gift from God. And so God interprets the dream but makes the revelation plain to Joseph. And so Joseph is able to communicate with Pharaoh exactly what happens. And what I learned from this is that it's something I posted on social media that morning, was that every crisis creates an opportunity for promotion. Every crisis creates an opportunity for promotion. And the crisis that created an opportunity for promotion for Joseph was the impending famine that was going to sweep across the land. Now, Joseph was one of several children that Jacob had. Jacob had 12 children. That's why he called it 12 tribes of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. So Joseph was actually the first of the children born to Rachel. And so, for people that don't know the backstory, Jacob worked for Laban, and Laban tricked him and essentially gave him his first daughter, Rebecca. And he didn't really love Rebecca the way he loved Rachel, but he ended up working for 7 years, got Rebecca, and then ended up working another 7 years for Laban to get Rachel. And initially, Rachel was not able to conceive any children. Rebecca had conceived several children for Jacob, but finally, God made it such that Rachel was able to conceive, and the first child that she had was Joseph. And so Jacob loved Joseph so much that he spoiled him. And that's what created the resentment among his brothers toward him, which eventually led to them selling him into slavery, and then that's how he ends up in Egypt. Now, I'm giving you a very Cliff Notes version of it, but by and large, that's really kind of the genesis, if you will, pun intended, of how Joseph ended up in Egypt. Now, while he was in Egypt, he ended up getting into prison on false charges, to be quite honest, but I won't get into all of that. And while he was in prison, he met two other prisoners who had dreams. And he interpreted those dreams accurately. And it was because of that accurate interpretation of those dreams that he ended up finding himself in front of Pharaoh to interpret Pharaoh's dream. And he interpreted Pharaoh's dream accurately. And the crisis that was going to be coming was the fact that there was going to be a famine spreading across the land. And so I share this with everybody out there because we are in a period of time right now where we're practicing social distancing. So if anybody listens to this down the line, this is taking place in 2020. And in the first quarter of this year, we've experienced a pandemic as a result of COVID-19. And so this pandemic has created social distancing. It has caused us to remain in isolation. It has created crisis and calamity from an economic perspective, from a health perspective, from a political perspective. And so there's a lot of crisis that is surrounding us. And I want to share this perspective about Joseph because out of this crisis, there is going to be opportunity for promotion. And for anybody that's listening to this, I want you to understand that Joseph's story is not something that is outside of the realm of possibility. There are plenty of people who have gone to prison and have come out of prison and have become successful people outside of prison as a result of the experiences that preceded them getting out of prison. So Joseph's ascent is not something that is unreasonable or unrealistic. But many of us find ourselves in crisis, and the normal response to crisis is to go into our shell and to shrink and to say, this is too much for me to handle. I can't do this. And I want to encourage people who are listening to this and who have taken an opportunity to read the book of Genesis. Because I would say go back and read Genesis 37, chapter 37, and read all the way through chapter 50 and really study and understand Joseph's story. Because Joseph's story teaches us that opportunity for promotion comes out of crisis. And instead of shrinking from crisis and shrinking from challenges and being afraid of challenges, we should embrace those challenges and recognize that there is going to be an opportunity for us to receive promotion in whatever form that might be out of that crisis. And so, as I said, it's extremely important for us to recognize that life is always going to present challenges. Life is always going to present crises that will challenge our sensibilities and challenge our faith in the systems that we hold dear. But we cannot shrink from crisis. We cannot move away from it and say that we can't handle it, because out of those crises will come an opportunity for promotion. And so I hope that by hearing this and understanding that when Joseph interpreted the dream for Pharaoh, and he interpreted it accurately, Pharaoh recognized that the capability of this young man was such that he couldn't put anybody else in charge of all of this. He had to elevate Joseph and put him over Egypt, only to be second in command to Pharaoh himself. And so he put Joseph in charge of executing a plan in the midst of a crisis that would ensure the viability and the success of not only Egypt, but also to save the lives of many people all throughout the land that Egypt controlled and occupied. Everybody from outside of Egypt was coming into Egypt to receive resources and to receive guidance and to get food and supplies and resources from Egypt, because the crisis created an opportunity for the promotion of Joseph. And so I would say to everybody that's out there that's listening, be very mindful during crisis about what problems you're going to solve for people. Because that's what Joseph did. Joseph solved a problem for Pharaoh, and that's why he was elevated in the midst of that crisis. So in the midst of this crisis, or in the midst of any crises in the future, you have to ask yourself the question, what is the problem that I am going to solve for other people? And in doing that, in doing so, you will find an opportunity for promotion for yourself, because you are a problem solver. And that's what I learned from Joseph, is that if I can be a problem solver and develop strategies to help people solve a problem in the midst of a crisis, I will always have an opportunity for promotion. And that is the same on the job. That is the same in politics. That is the same in the church. That is the same within your communities, within your families. If you are a problem solver, you will always have an opportunity for promotion, much like Joseph. And so I'll leave you guys with that. Perhaps I will revisit Joseph and talk a little bit about other things that I've learned from Joseph, but for today, I just wanted to talk about the fact that crisis creates an opportunity for promotion. And I hope that that is helpful to everybody that is listening. And I would encourage you to go back, as I said, and read Genesis chapter 37 and read all the way through Genesis chapter 50 so that you can see how Joseph handled crisis at every turn, because that wasn't the only crisis he had to handle. There were several of them that he had to handle and he had to navigate. And every single time it created an opportunity for promotion. All right. Well, you guys take care and remain blessed as always. And I'll talk to you guys soon.